Okay, chapter 1, part 2, audio file. So we're talking about Picasso, and we're moving on to showing the influences from cultures. So at the time, we're looking at Picasso's work in 1907. There's a big influx of cultural stimulus from other lands, let's say. So there's the Paris exhibition. There's several exhibitions that bring in cultures and artifacts and people from various regions in the world. And at this time, a lot was being brought in from Africa, and these masks that were really fascinating to early 20th century people. They were, quite beautiful and interesting. And that is one of the influences you see here in the painting, especially on the women's faces to the right. It could be, and it is believed that at least this one here was originally a male figure of a customer observing the prostitutes, and then he painted over the face with an African mask. Interesting influence here. Again, Cubism, where you're seeing sort of the side of the face and the frontal area of the face at one time. So you're seeing two angles at one time. If we move on to just looking at the mask, and this is image 1.6 in the Boom or Maboom culture in Cuba, Central Africa. This is a ceremonial mask, and a lot of African art that we see, at least that has come into the Western culture, has been masks and different kind of ceremonial costumes for masquerade. So there's traditional ceremonies that blend dance and song, and we'll get more into that as well later. But you see that they have these sort of artifacts left over of these different ceremonial performances, and these become sought after art objects. Okay, aesthetics. So remember that aesthetics shift culture and time, and it involves the attributes that elevate the particular object above others. It goes beyond individual tastes and preferences, and it's a critical reflection on art and also a person's cultural preferences, appreciation, and definition of art. So aesthetics has got a lot of information. I'm going to have you really read that over in the book because it's a philosophy as well as something that's part of visual culture, and I think the book does a really good job of explaining that to you. When we get into style, this is important, and I really want to hammer this home as best I can. These hands that you see in illustration 1.7, they're trying to show you the difference, our author's trying to show you the difference between the different styles. Okay, now they're not exactly styles, but they're sort of designations. Representational work is really all of these 5 here. Even though this is kind of crazy, this is the abstract one, this is still representational. So we go back to Picasso's Mademoiselles. Those are representational, but they're abstract. So sometimes you have more than one designation, more than one style. So if we go left to right here, we have naturalistic, right? This is how a hand really looks in the world. Then you get idealized here. This is idealized. So we have a lot of the wrinkles and stuff removed. Now, it's not always the case, but that's a good example. Then we have expressive on this side. Sorry, my mouse is not doing what I wanted to do. Expressive, so that's kind of breaking down. If you look at these shadows here, it's breaking these shadows down into larger brush strokes. Now, expressionism in this case is kind of including impressionism as well. But when you get into the actual isms of the 20th century, expressionism and impressionism are two very different things. And the actual expressionism of the 20th century does not look like that. But we're using this as a way to delineate different ways of making and looking. I'll try to explain that a little bit more. Surrealism is here. So if you look at this, there's sort of a see-through nature to this hand. There's sort of vines and sort of wooden structures and other stuff going on inside of this hand, which we wouldn't normally see. Surrealism is a juxtaposition of two very different um, arrangements of things, like size, the scale could be different, or two things that normally wouldn't appear together, which we have in this case. And then this is abstracted, and this is distorted, enlarged, or, in this case, it's kind of repeated. So this could be referring to cubism right here. So that's abstracted. This last one that we're looking at is non-objective. There is no hand there. So with non-objective art, it's really important to remember there is no object. We're not trying to see a thing. Sometimes non-objective, and actually I would say at certain points in time, abstract and non-objective would be one and the same thing, but that isn't the case, and our author's really making that point as well, so make sure you're clear on that. So a representational piece is it contains entities from the world in a recognizable form. So really all 5 of these you could say are representational. Underneath that broader heading, then you get into naturalistic, idealized, expressionistic, surrealistic, and abstract. Does that make sense? Okay, so I'm going to skip that part. I'm going to go, actually no, this is good. Idealized art. So if we're looking at this is stylized or idealized. So it's looking within the culture. What is important in the culture, like the facial features or the posture or the items they would be holding? What is important in that culture? What is ideal? So that is what we see. It's natural imagery that is modified, and it's perfection within the aesthetics of the particular culture. So this is modified and exaggerated. And you think about Egyptians here too. There's a little bit of that, but that's really more stylized. But this is idealized within the culture. Okay. When we go over here, we look at Marcus Aurelius. What's idealized is actually naturalism. Very confusing, I know. But these are both rendered in idealized styles. So expressionism or expressionist styles of art, they're heightened emotion, a sense of urgency or spontaneity. Expressive styles are going to appear bold and immediate, featured and distorted, abstract imagery, asymmetrical, textured surfaces. Surreal, it's bizarre, fantastic arrangements of images or materials, and it taps the workings of the unconscious mind. So in this case, maybe somebody's thinking about the structure of the hand within the hand. Maybe they dreamt about it and recorded it. Non-objective art, and remember, this is not non-objective because why? Because we see figures in there. We know there's people there, so this is still representational versus non-objective. So it's an important distinction. Abstracted imagery may or may not be recognizable, but derived from reality by distorting, enlarging, added, or dissecting from nature. So this is coming from nature. Non-objective art is more to the point, and do we have a good example? We don't. Non-objective art would be just like lines or dots or stripes or just fields of color. And we will look at work like that, and I'll point that out again. But non-objective art is not trying to show us a figure or a flower or any real thing. It's just trying to show us something that came out of the artist's mind, not like a real thing from nature. Okay, I'm going to stop here.